Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Fuse Games Conference, a completely online and free conference from the Staffordshire University's Games Department. I'm Robert Lambert, your host for the conference. Remember that you can access all talks this week via the Staff's Games Development YouTube and Twitch channels, so make sure that you like and subscribe for further updates and easy access to those streams. Otherwise, you can access the timetable and links to each of the session on our website, which will be running in a banner just now. So our first guest for today is a 3D game artist at Marmalade Game Studio and a former student of mine, now working in the industry. So I'd like to welcome Joe to everybody. Welcome, Joe.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Joao. I'm gonna be presenting some character art. I picked a few things that I thought could be relevant or maybe interesting that you don't see maybe so easily online or just harder to reach. I'm not going to go into details in sort of anatomy or anything like that because there's already lots of resources, and I'm sure in the university you get to learn a bit of it. So yeah, let's start.
Wonderful. So let's introduce our co-host as well, Jennifer Chandler, another one of the games lecturers here at Staffordshire University. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi everyone, how are we all doing this morning? So hi, my name's Jennifer. I teach alongside Robert. We actually share an office together as well. It's a good time.
Lovely. So today, me and Jennifer are going to be monitoring all the chat for any comments and questions. Please do bear in mind that if we do have too many of them, we will have to simplify, or we'll have to consider the natural flow of the conversation and take that on board. So we're going to pass over to Joao now, who's going to do his talk for you.
Okay. So I'll be covering today like a quick introduction of who I am and what I do. I'll show some of my work, both professional work and personal. I'll talk about a bit of 3D character development, workflow development, which is something I feel like it's important to mention. Some useful names, so basically some references that can be useful to learn from. Final thoughts, and of course, if there's time as well, I'll do a quick demo and any questions that you guys might have. So I'll start out by saying, so my name is João, or Joao, as you can see there, how you can pronounce it. Born and raised in Portugal. I studied in the University of Northampton, where Rob was my lecturer. It was Rob that introduced me to ZBrush, a tool that today I pretty much use every single day. I've been in the industry for almost 5 years, almost two of which, I've been focusing on character art. Currently working at Marmalade Game Studio, and as you can see there, that's the link to my portfolio. I've been working on Monopoly expansions that you can find on mobile. Game of Life 2, which is also on mobile and platforms. Ticket to Ride, I worked on the base game and the first expansion that came out last November, if I'm not mistaken, and the newest Cluedo that you can play on mobile, PC, and all platforms, if I'm not mistaken. So this is just some of the work I've done for Monopoly and Cluedo. I chose these because it's more towards the character art. My fascination for character art kind of started with Monopoly when I was asked to do some tokens for the game, and they involved little creatures or little figurines, and I started to kind of feel the need to do even more, and that's the point of origin for me and the whole character art fascination. And at some point, when I heard that Cluedo was going to be was going to be a project in the studio, I asked if I could be at least part of the character art. They gave me the opportunity to do so because I actually had some proof in my portfolio, and they said, yeah, of course. So it was nice of them to give me the opportunity to work on a few of the characters for Cluedo. And as you can see on the right, this is just some of the characters I worked on, both the base characters and their reskins or their alternative outfits. And on the very right corner, right lower corner of the characters, you can see a statue that's just a prop I did for the environment. It was just a high poly. These characters, just to give an idea, from start to finish, they would take 7 days to do, working days, and a reskin would be 5.5 days to 6 days to do from block out to textured. This is some of my personal work, and this is what you can see on my portfolio. I tend to use these pieces as documentation. I tend to leave a pretty lengthy description on what I wanted to work on or to focus on. It's a good way to kind of go back and see pretty much how I'm evolving as a character artist, and see the flaws and see where I can improve. That's going to be something I'm going to be talking about, which is feedback. And now to the character development. I'll be going through these points, starting off with a block out. I'm not going to be showing or demonstrating a lot of examples just because I know, again, this is something that you learn. It's just a reminder for those that are wanting to learn character art or even environment or props. For blockouts, I always make sure, and me and my colleagues always make sure that the blockout has to be on a really good spot before moving on to any other thing, just because it makes things a lot smoother, a lot easier to change if you need, just because we've seen people going immediately adding geometry like on the millions, and they only have a sphere, and they already have a super detailed sphere to work on, and it's usually harder to work with and to mold into bigger shapes, and the end result ends up being very bumpy, or the surface of the characters end up being very weird, especially when you bake the details into a lower poly. So I have to emphasize to always have a strong blockout. These are just a few blockout examples I found on ArtStation. One is from George Zakis, and the other one is from Anatomy for Sculptures. As you can see, there are several types of blockouts. It's whatever fits your style or time. You can go very anatomical or very simplified, as long as the end result is what it's expected or better. That's all that matters. But just make sure that blockouts are always with the right proportions, matching the concept or the references you're using before going into detail. Now, when you go into detail, this is especially for more let's say realistic or photorealistic type of characters. This is just an example I took from one of my training anatomy exercises I've done. Also can be found on my portfolio for the curious ones. It essentially, people, when they start to do character art, they stop at some point, which is usually the secondary phase, which is not bad. Like, it's not the amount of detail, it's already good enough to have a decent character. But if you're going for a more realistic or photorealistic type of character, you will have to add a bit more, like the veins be more defined, the wrinkles. In this case, I stopped at a point where I saw that, okay, maybe the texture of the actual skin, I will leave it for texturing, which is an option as well. You can, texturing phase is always an option to add more detail. But if you're going for a photorealistic, then you should definitely add the tertiary details, which are the more minute detailing on the character, like the little wrinkles, the little bumps on the skin. So yeah, it's what I would suggest for clothing. And I specify clothing here because it's more of the area I like to work with. And the demo will be towards that. For those that want to do clothing for characters, study fold anatomy. It's a must. It's definitely something you really need to do if you want the result to be convincing, because it's very easy to see if you used references or you didn't for the wrinkles on the characters. There are several types of textiles, as you know, and you should always check if you're using a concept or a reference to check how that textile behaves with either movement or lighting or color itself. So use references always for this sort of work. Marvelous Designer, it's a software I use a lot, and as I say there, it's magical. I love it. It saves me a lot of time. I use it mainly for blockouts and the more broad folding on the clothing. Although you can do a finalized asset for in Marvelous, you should not aim for it, just because it will take a lot of time to have it as you want. What I would advise is if you don't have much time and you're working on a character, maybe have the block out, or just take it maybe to 50% of the process of the clothing, and then take it to ZBrush or Blender or whatever software you use to continue the sculpting process of the clothing. It's just because, yeah, since it's based off of simulations, Marvelous tends to kind of act on its own sometimes. And if you want specific detailings, it's a bit harder to get those details. For retopology, these ones, I'm really sorry for the people that actually did these images. I could not find the origin. I have them from Pinterest. I've had them for a while now, and they've been super helpful. Admittedly, I have not been the biggest fan of retopology. What I really like is sculpting, but I mean, everyone has their favorites. But this is really something that's really important, especially if your character will be animated, and you have to pay attention to certain loops. For example, on the face, you kind of have to have this sort of a five-sided star, as we call it, because it provides a more smoother flow on the character's face. So there won't be any artifacts when animating, or even just a cleaner topology overall. For the hands and pretty much the joints, usually on the bending bits, like the knees, fingers, or elbows, we tend to add more geometry where it curves. So on the outside part, so like this area. And the inside, we tend to have less geometry, simply because the bending will be more direct and won't be so curvy, and it will look unnatural. I would definitely say like work a lot on retopology. It's something that it's really important for character art in general, and animation. And if you're not animating, the person that will be animating and grading will thank you for it. Even today, I sometimes get like warnings, like, "Hey, could you do this instead, or could you do the retopo like this?" So yeah, make sure that you always do the retopology in a clean way to save everyone's the trouble of losing time and patience. Textures. So I'm not gonna go into the like how to texture or anything like that. This is more of things that I only found out later with just experimentation and just overall working. When it comes to baking from high to low, what I usually do is putting the character in an exploded view, so separating all elements, so that when baking, for example, in Substance Painter, there won't be so many artifacts or shadows that are not wanted for the texture process, and it won't make sense in the character overall. And I'll give you an example here. So for example, this is a character that I quickly baked with itself without high poly, just for this example. Here we can see an artifact, which is the hair of the character. Same for here. This is the rest of the actual hair with what seems to be sunglasses. If your character will be animated, we do not want any of these. It will look too weird. For example, if the character is picking up the glasses or moving around, the shading will stay there. And it will just look wrong overall, and it will be a mess. And what we want is everything to be clean, separated, like where is it? It's here. We want everything to be separated, so when texturing and using smart materials or masks, the smart materials and masks won't pick up on those extra details that were baked, meaning that will give you a smoother ride when it comes to texturing on the long run. For UVs and seams, what I usually do, especially if the character, for example, has an outfit that has stripes, like vertical stripes or stripes that just follow the outfit, I like to position them, the pieces, on the same direction that the stripes will be, simply because it just saves some time. And usually it's something that, you know, if you're dealing with time, which is usually is the culprit of not rushing, but working on your tasks, any bit of time that you can save is the best. And in this case, I position the UVs all in the same direction because I know this character will have stripes going in the same direction, and I won't have to copy the smart material or copy the details, and making the file as well heavier and the computations heavier as well overall. So make sure you take care of your UVs for the purpose that you need when texturing. Now, going on a bit on the actual textures when exporting them. This is for Unreal Engine. There are similar examples for Unity or other engines. But instead of having, for example, 4K textures for AO, roughness, metallic, you can put them all in one. You even have this preset in Substance when exporting. This just saves a lot of space, and for those that struggle with space and have to deal with lots of files, it's mean, it's perfect just because you're saving a third the space that you'd be using. For example, for Unity, you can put on the red and green channel the normals, and on the blue channel you can put ambient occlusion. So this is just like those small tips and tricks that you can do to save on either time, space, which are usually the issues that we deal with outside of just the work itself. For just general tips and tricks, the first one, the FOV, if you're using Blender, ZBrush, or sculpting software, pay attention to the FOV, especially if you're using faces as a reference, because if, for example, the reference was taken in a 50 angle FOV, and you're working on an 80 or 20, it will be distorted and it will not look correct. And at the end, can be a bit stretched or can be a bit more widened, the face. So always pay attention before you start working to try to match more or less the FOV of the reference with the software. Reuse and reshape to save time. This is something, it's a practice that's done pretty much everywhere. Like, I don't do the characters from complete scratch. Usually we have already a block out or a pre-made generic body that you can then reuse. This even can go for example, shoes or outfits. If you see that, okay, you did a boot for a previous character, now you're going to have to do a different shoe. I mean, instead of doing it from scratch, unless you want and you have the time, just reuse the boot, cut the higher part of the boot and reshape. I mean, it's not a crime. It's not, the time is what's important, and the end result is what's important. So feel free to, be green with 3D as well. This is something I've noticed in the past, is people using 3D references to do their own 3D work. I mean, it's not wrong in any way, but if you're doing something even stylized but photorealistic or realistic, try to use real-life references, just because real-life references are real life. So I mean, it's I think it's enough to, as an argument. 3D work can be accurate, but it's a better practice and overall for your development to use just real life references. Triangles are not the boogeyman. You can have triangles. It's not a crime. It's used when a mesh is exported into an engine. Usually the engine turns the whole mesh into triangles anyway. If you're starting out the block out before the high poly, so if you're not sculpting, okay, sure, maybe triangles you should avoid if you're gonna subdivide it so it won't create any weird artifacts. But if you're doing the low poly after the high poly, triangles are not gonna cause much trouble. And a last one for the tips and tricks is, I don't know if this is useful, it's just something that we kind of learned along the way, but when starting out a substance file, depending on the engine that you're going to be using, so Unreal, Unity, or others, Unreal Engine uses DirectX as a computation for the normals. So the DirectX and the OpenGL is for the normal textures. It's how they calculate the channels. That's why maybe sometimes you have to invert the green channel on one or the other. It's because of this. So DirectX is for Unreal Engine and OpenGL is for Unity. So this way you don't have to, again, waste time on just doing switches on the channels or fixing things like those. Workflow development. So I feel like this is a bit important. It's something that everyone hears and everyone kind of knows, but I want to be that person that also insists on it, just because I feel like it's important. Let's start with the references. Don't work without references, please. It's very easy if you're doing a specific task for the studio you're in or just your project. Unless it's a challenge, please use references. It's very noticeable when you don't, and that will make you go back and fix, and you end up probably being frustrated with the amount of feedback that you get and the amount of time that you will have to spend fixing it. Plus, if there are people dependent on your work, it's just gonna mess with the whole pipeline. When you get references, try to get from different angles as well, just because sometimes lighting can just reveal certain details that you might have not been obvious, or maybe the whole reference or the whole, in this case, character or person might look different. So depending on for what purpose you want to do that character, using a real life reference. Maybe if you want to look more sinister, maybe go look at low light or lights that are on this side to inspire you more into going for something more sinister. But if not, if you want something more accurate or more standard, then go with overall lighting around the face. It's just some of those things that it can make a difference in the end. Try not to overwhelm yourself with references. I'm a culprit of this as well. When I'm doing a mood board, I tend to collect a lot, and probably not even half of it will be used, and I end up having a pure ref file, gigantic for no reason. So try to be economical with the amount of references that you use. At the end, if you feel like you've ended your mood board or your reference collection, just have a look, review the mood board, and remove anything that you see that maybe you don't need or you're not going to be using. So yeah, have a look at that essentially. If working from a concept, keep close communication with concept artists. This can be either from the concept artist that works with you directly, or if you're just doing a project on your own and you're using a concept art from a concept artist, usually it's good to send them a message or just ask them stuff. They tend to like, especially when they know that someone is doing their work in 3D. It's a good way to network as well. So you never know, you might make new friends that way. So definitely keep communication with the concept artists, especially if you're not sure of a detail or how something should be. Always talk to them. You're just saving time and a headache, avoiding headaches from feedback. So yeah. And for those that don't know, PureRef is a free software. It's not sponsored or anything like that. It's just a very useful tool that I mean, everyone that I work with uses. It's free. You can put all the references that you need in this black board or whatever color. Actually, you can change the color of the board. You can add notes and organize however you want, resize the images. It's perfect for people that want to create their mood boards. Get to know the software you use. This, I feel like it's super important. Don't just stick to doing the basics. If you have the time, really explore the software. There's lots of tutorials, there's lots of free resources in case you need something specific or more generalized overview of the softwares. You have access to lots of resources nowadays to know anything about the software that you use. Like I say there, it's the more you know about it, more confident you become with the software, meaning that you become more efficient, you become faster. There's only pluses in knowing the software that you use. And this one is kind of something I noticed, is that you notice the progress when you start to have different solutions for the same problem. It ends up being more of a, what kind of solution am I going to go for? That's usually a good sign, meaning that you not only know the software better, and not only you know how to fix the problem, you will also be able to tell how much time you will take to fix the problem, especially if it's an urgent issue. So it's highly advisable to really know the softwares that you use. These are just some books that, I mean, for character art are great. I'm pretty sure there's PDF versions of these books, but if you like the more, having the physical book, it's always great. But the first three on the left are anatomy specific. The one in the middle, mastering portraiture, it's more towards the expressions and kind of seeing how sculptures look and approach expressions on people. It's definitely something that it's helpful if, for example, you're doing a specific expression or just simply animating and you need some logical references on how to approach certain emotions. I wouldn't say like since it's sculptures, it's not real life. It's more about the logic itself, not the real life reference. Morpho, it's a little book I've used for clothing, not in the sense that it shows you how the fabric works or like different types of fabric works or anything like that. It's more of simplifying how movement and clothing affect each other. And since I like to see usually things super simplified, because the more simplified, the easier you get to understand and the easier you get to move on to other things. This book is perfect for that. Kind of shows you the flow of how the folds and the wrinkles act and how they behave with certain gestures. It's perfect for when you're doing statues or just figurines, that sort of stuff. It's really good. I highly recommend it. And the dictionary of color combinations, it's mostly if you're doing concept work or just you're not sure about colors in general, like coming up with a color palette for your project. This is actually perfect because it comes in groups of 2, 3, and 4 colors. There's 2 volumes of this, and it can give you a new sense of certain colors going together and actually looking good. So it's something I recommend just for the experimentation, let's say. Feedback. So this one, I didn't expect it to be, or I did not expect to see as much of this the way I did. But it seems that feedback, it's not always very welcoming on certain people. Like I say there, it's great to have confidence in your work, but sometimes ego can get in the way of not only your work, but your colleagues as well. So please keep your ego in check. It saves a lot of people trouble, headaches, and it improves your work overall. Um, it's definitely very important on the process of your overall work as well, not just character work, but any type of work. It I mean, I think it was mostly through feedback that I got to learn some of the most important fundamentals of what I do today. So it's always keep your eyes open and ears open as well. Of course, sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt, but I mean, it's pick your battles in a way. This is just an example. This is something that's on my portfolio as well. um, on this phase, I was working just fine, and I kind of stopped, and something was off about this. And until I realized, and I started to compare, putting reference images above the actual character, and from this point to this one, you see that the proportions will fit more realistically. Um, what I'm trying to say with this is that try to criticize your own work if you're alone, if you're doing your own project. Try not to just jump into what you're doing and speed run through it. Take the time to kind of evaluate what you're doing through steps, simply because you might miss certain things that in the end will look a bit off. So yeah, always criticize your own work, and always expect to have feedback for what you do, especially if you're working in a company or with other people. It's natural. It's not like if you get feedback, it's not because they hate your work or you're going to be fired or anything like that. Feedback is natural. It's to help. It means they care. So it's the end goal. The end goal is what you have to aim for. It's to have everyone be excited with what you do, and that the people that will be playing or using your work for something, for entertainment or whatever ends your work will be, the end is that it looks good, that people like it, and people enjoy seeing it. So when you have a team, it's a team for a reason. It's to work as a team and to progress as one. So never be afraid of feedback. It's it's to help. It's not to, and unless of course the feedback is I hate it, then I mean, come on, just try to go to someone else, I guess. These are some useful names that I definitely learned a lot from, since you have to kind of do your own study outside of uni. Studying doesn't end at uni. It's an ongoing process. It never ends. And these are just some of the names I refer to when I want to learn something, or I always keep my eyes on for what they're doing, simply because to me, they always provide something that can help in my progress. So I'm just going to leave this here, just for you guys to, if you want to take a screenshot or whatever. I've put some references for Anatomy, ZBrush, Marvelous, Blender, Substance, and just general things. Some of these people do have paid tutorials or stuff like that, but they also have free, and all of it is super useful. There's other artists out there that I refer to, but simply, if I had the time to put everyone, I would, but I simply cannot. And some final thoughts. Discipline and routine is something that should be applied if you want to see progress faster. If you're only doing work from time to time, once a week to every 2 weeks, you might see progress, but it's not going to be much, and that might cause frustration on the long run. So maybe try to find a routine and stick with it. I'm not going to say that work every single day or work 5 hours a day on your own stuff, plus on top of any job that you might already have. Not like that. Like, try to find something that's doable and that you feel like it gives you some satisfaction in doing something or progressing. Just, because if you do too much, then of course you will burn out, and burnout is a no word in the industry. As some of you might know, burnouts can easily happen if you don't have breaks or if you don't rest properly. So always pay attention to that. Just if you feel like you want to do something every day, even if it's just opening ZBrush or any software, have a sphere in front of you, stretch it. Just do that. I mean, it's fine. It's nothing wrong with it. You usually, if I do that, if I'm a bit lazy, and I just do that, I end up doing something more just because I want to see that sphere not so sphery, if that's even a word, but doing a bit every day can make you just wanting to do more. So yeah, for sure, it's something that you should look into if you want to see a bit more progress. This one, the habit of having things organized. This is super helpful, not just for you, but if you're working with people, this will be super helpful for them, and they will not hate you, and they will not, bother you with asking with where certain things are, or why is it named wrong, or certain things like that. So keep your files organized with the proper names. Usually studios have art bibles, and usually the art bibles tend to tell you how to name things, how the process is, or the workflow pipeline of the assets that you're going to work on. So respect the art bible. It's not by chance that it's called Art Bible. Oh well. But respect it, and it makes things a lot easier for everyone on the long run. And what I think it's the most important, and still today, I mean, I still have it. It's the imposter syndrome. You will be married to it. There's not a way around it. It will always be there with you. It's going to be on your shoulder, whispering on you. But it keeps you grounded. Don't let it invade completely your mental state or anything like that. But it keeps you in check with reality in a way. You will always feel like you might not be good enough, or you're not going to be fast enough, or whatever. But the thing is, you're there for a reason. If you got the job, it's because you can do it. So, I mean, it's another thing that you have to take it with a grain of salt, I guess. it will always be there. I think, yeah, if possible, I have a demo to show, just if it's
Yeah,
if
go
I'm
for
not.
it.
It's on Marvelous. So for those that don't know Marvelous that well, it's essentially a software that works based off of simulations. So for example, if I go here and do a square, I'll have like a panel here, and it will simulate. Pretty simple. The concept is pretty simple. So if I, for example, want something a bit more, I don't know, a bit more complex, I guess, you can sew things together, and they will stick together in the simulation. It's a fun software to use, especially when you start out and you start to experiment with different things. It's always fun to discover things in this software. So I kind of prepared a quick thing, just to kind of just to kind of show you guys what can be quickly done. By the way, Marvelous has like a generic people bodies that you can use if you don't want to do your own character. Let's see if it's gonna load. Okay. So I did this outfit super quickly. It's nothing extraordinary, anything like that you can do with Marvelous. I'm now simulating, and as you can see, nothing is falling. So as you can see, the clothes stick to the body. You can use the simulation to pretty much move around certain things. If you don't like certain details, or if you don't like certain wrinkles, how they look like, you can move them around. Or if you want this guy to have the sleeves up, you can. It's super intuitive. It's you can do a lot of stuff with it just by clicking on the simulation button. So yeah, this is how I start the process of making clothes for the characters I work on. Usually this is maybe the stage I stop at, simply because I feel like I can do much more in ZBrush faster. But for example, just to give a quick example here, you can mess with, for example, the pressure here makes it more puffy. Or if you don't want so puffy and you want a more weird style, you can make the pants attach more to the legs or to the form of the body. There's lots of stuff that you can do. You can quickly close the jacket if you don't want an open jacket, using the sewing tool. This is, by the way, I'm doing like a very quick demonstration of Marvelous, but not a tutorial by itself. But essentially, on this side, you have the 2D view of the clothing. It's also something I really like about it. It's the fact that it simplifies what you're doing, and you can tell very quickly what you're doing and what you're clicking on, and everything like that. On this side, of course, it's the 3D result, and on the 2D side can even be used for UVs. So if you want to UV here, which is an option, you already have the islands prepared and you just have to fit them in place, which is great if you want to save some time and you know that you might not do extreme changes to the clothing in the coming phases. I'm also gonna show part of how I do the clothing. So like I said, I usually leave the clothing in this state, and I export it to ZBrush. So what I usually do is I individually select the bits of clothing that I worked on. So in this case, the trousers. I'll export it as an OBJ selector. So this way, it pretty much specifies the clothing that you've selected and not like the whole project. So in case you want to export it to ZBrush or Blender and you just want one thing, make sure that it's OBJ selected and not FBX or just OBJ, because that way it will export everything. So in this case, let's just do the trousers. Just some. I usually tend to put it as a single object, and well, these are just some specifics that have to do with the actual garment. Okay. So now here in ZBrush, no, it's here and here. Okay. Sometimes this happens; it will come out inverted. You just have to pretty much do this, and it will be fine. And as you can see, it's not a very good surface to work on at the moment. Like if I start to smooth out, it's a bit chaotic. It starts to ruin the whole thing. So what I usually do is I tend to, first of all, do auto groups. So that way, since each piece will be separated, ZBrush will automatically find each piece from Marvelous and separate it from each other. And then what I like to do for bits that are going to be like of harder texture or harder material, I tend to separate them like this. And then I just, well, this is a shortcut that I have, so I split them. I think the split tool is here. Yeah, so split hidden. And I keep this. So now where I go from here is I'm gonna use Z-remesher, which is right here. I tend to keep groups and remove any smoothing group. And I tend to, I'll go with same. And just Z-remesh it to have, okay, why did it not work? Oh, right, okay. So this is one part of the job, I guess. It's having errors for no reason. Okay, let's see if maybe this will just do it. Okay, now as well. Okay, there you go. Okay. So now I have a more good-looking topology to work with. Everything is in quads. So it's easier to work with, I'd say. Just another example as to why I don't like to work with triangles in ZBrush is because they don't act with let's say predictability. So I'm going to do the same for these. Keep the groups, and okay, it's maybe too much, but for this purpose, it should be fine. And what I do after, actually, I'm gonna. Okay. What I do after, it's adding thickness. Usually, I will go for something thin, because it's very easy to just go overboard with it. Yeah, this should be fine, and for the rest of the trousers should be the same. I usually tend to go a bit thinner than what I did for the previous one. You can select as well the direction as of the thickness. So basically, if it goes outwards or inwards, in this case, it will go outwards. What I've noticed is usually if you pick inwards, it's more accurate to what you did in Marvelous. So it's a matter of preference, I'd say, or if you want to be more picky or accurate, it's whatever floats your boat. And from here, I can start working on it. I can start adding the more folds if I want, or adding other things. You can subdivide, and it will not cause any issues usually. Same for this. This one's it's already high, so probably won't change much if I subdivide it. At least visually, it won't change much. Let me just go for something low, just see. Sure, just for the example. Subdivide it now, and yeah, now it's more visible. And of course, it's a matter of pushing things and putting them in the right place that you want. And from here, you just pretty much go either add wrinkles, fix things that you think should be fixed. By the way, for those that might be asking or wondering, no, I do not use all of these. This is just because at some point I was doing a project that I needed a particular brush, and I ended up adding here and never removed it. So yeah, that's something I have to kind of organize. But yeah, it's from here on out, it's adding folds however you want, using alphas, other textures, doing it manually. I like to do a combination of both, either sharp or not using the pen right now. More sharp look, or just you can use a damp standard as well to kind of do a more of a stylized, sharper look. It's really whatever you feel like it needs work on. Also, a good thing I like to add to is memory folds. Usually for that, I tend to use an alpha. Not sure if let me see if I can find it. What I usually do is I go on standard brush, and so it's the brush that's usually on the go when you open ZBrush. I put it on the drag rectangular, and on the alpha, I add the actual alpha. I'm not sure if this is the right alpha, but let's just test it out now. This is for rocks, but yeah, I don't have it here. But essentially, memory folds are those folds that you notice it more on jackets that tend to have like a nylon type of textile or fabric. Let me see, maybe this one, maybe not. Well, No, it's not here. Yeah, I cannot find it, I think. Close, maybe this one. Oops. No, but it's usually those very subtle. I can kind of replicate it with this brush anyway. Very subtle folds that might not look like much, but when you add them and the overall look, and when you bake them, you notice the extra detail, which enhances the appeal to the clothing. It's if you, for example, look at the jacket that you might have for rain, you might have those memory folds. It's just folds that just stayed there. They're not. They're just created by usage. They're not folds that when you move, it's not those types of folds. It's more just on the actual surface they're created. Like I said, nylon is one of them that you notice the folding. It's very angular as well. For example, tuxedos, it's not as much. Tuxedos tend not to have memory folds. So it really depends on what you're doing and what kind of clothing you're aiming for. So yeah, this was the little demo just to show you the process of going from Marvelous to ZBrush, and to how to quickly move one thing and develop it further with ZBrush. So yeah.
I think the first one that I'm going to ask Joao is, so you start off in Marvelous, head into ZBrush. At what point would you say that, because you said I stop after sort of maybe a 20-30% sort of finished mark, what kind of characteristics would you consider as that 20 to 30% finished mark?
Since for my job, the characters that I work on are not fully realistic. So if I come back here, they're not, they're stylized. Usually the folding that I'm looking for, it's the more broader folds, let's say. Not the minute ones that are super thin and super detailed. So usually on the 20-30% mark of the work done in Marvelous, it's already sufficient for what I need. For example, for this one in the middle, or even this one, I tend to go more on towards the 60-70%, since the simulations are more accurate in a way, even though you should not completely trust, even though it's a really good software for it. Always pay attention to how the simulation gives you the results. Sometimes might not be completely accurate, but I mean, most of the time it's works just fine.
So we'll probably have some students and some viewers of this stream at some point that are going to be new to using Marvelous, and probably want to know how to get the best results, as you mentioned there, that you can have some problems with it at certain stage. How do you set a project up to be the most successful with that start?
So like I said, depending on the art style, let me just open here depending on the art style that you're going for. First of all, for those that are new, you can actually have these ones. They are base ones that you can use to kind of have already an idea of how the patterns are made. But if not, honestly, real life patterns for clothing work fine. as references. And for the style that you're going for, if you're going for more realistic, then you have to pay attention to the textile. And the textiles usually can be changed on the equivalent of a material. So these would be the materials used in Marvelous. In this case, for the jacket, I'm using a leather lambskin preset. You have lots of presets with Marvelous, so you don't even have to create your own. You can. I mean, it's can be fun, but Marvelous already has lots of fabrics. And if you have a more stylized character, maybe having a textile that it's like leather, that will not have such small folds, so detailed when simulating, it's best. If, of course, you're going to go for a more detailed and super precise sort of textile or look, then maybe looking at textiles, like, for example, in Marvelous, you have nylon featherweight, which gives you super detailed. I'm going to actually change on this one on the jacket so it's easier to see. Can give you super detailed folding. Let me see if. Okay. And now I'm just going to remove the pressure here. And something else about Marvelous is that if you want to add geometry, it's on the particle distance. So the lower you go, the more geometry it adds. So it's kind of like the inverse sort of logic. So if I want a lot of detail, it will create more geometry. And I'll show you here as well. As you can see here, since I only selected the sleeves, the geometry on this compared to this, it's there's a big difference. But you can see it already starts to create a sort of minor detailing. Even the actual textile starts to give you lots of tiny little wrinkles and folds. It really depends on for what you need.
So would you say that detail sort of dictates the density then within these projects?
Yes, for sure. Of course, in the beginning, the idea I had of Marvelous is that you'd use this, so you'd use Marvelous for more realistic work, but actually you can use it for really anything. It's just a matter of playing with the material presets to give you a more accurate or more broad end result on the clothing.
So with the characters that you've been doing recently, Joao, obviously for Marmalade, you say that they've gone for a more stylized approach. Why is that? Is it because of what kind of game they're producing, or is it for what they're building it for? That obviously then has an effect on the characters in which you have to produce.
Yes, so the decision was mainly due to time and just the overall idea that we had for Pluto. We didn't want like a hyper-realistic or realistic game just because it wouldn't fit the mood of the game itself. That and the time, of course, we would not have enough time and resources to do a full-on accurate photorealistic game. And so we went with a stylized that would look good, and it would look also pleasant and fun to play on. And through that, we basically didn't need as many resources and as much time to pretty much come up with the game itself. So while we were in pre-production, I was exploring ways of making the workflow faster. One of them was, of course, using Marvelous and trying to find a way to make clothes fast and keep the stylized look. And so playing with the presets was one of them. So I tend to use the leather preset to give you basically the more broad type of folding on the clothing.
We have a lot of this when sort of people say that they're making stylized characters, and it seems such a general term. For the Cluedo game, when you were sort of talking about like we're making stylized characters, what did you mean by that?
So the stylized will go for in our case, it's more the proportions are not exactly realistic. They are semi-realistic. So there are certain rules that we kind of bend with the proportions, and plus the texturing, mainly the texturing that's stylized. If I go here to the presentation, the first character. So this is one of the victims. It's for the second expansion we did, or the first expansion we did for Cluedo. So overall, the proportions are pretty much realistic, even though you can maybe the hands and the hips are not completely accurate. It's dependent on as well on the character itself to emphasize a bit more their own design and personality. And the texturing overall, I mean, you can see that it's not realistic by itself. It has unfortunately, I don't have like a more close-up render of the character, but you'd be able to see the paint strokes on the face, for example, or even the clothing has paint strokes. So it's also a mix of the textile of the tuxedo. It's you use real life fabric textures, but then you apply a more stylized look. In our case, we use smart material that adds this brush stroke effect to add that more stylized look. But of course, like you said, stylized is very generalized, or it's a broad topic, but I'd say this is just one of many stylized styles out there.
Was it something that Marmalade had within their Bible then, was it? How to go about doing these?
Yes, for sure. It's we use this stylized, semi-stylized, stylized for texturing, semi-stylized for proportion and look of the geometry, let's say.
Was there any sort of specific rules or anything like that that you had to follow, or was there some sort of creative freedom with the characters?
Well, we do have concepts, so it's kind of following that and applying the same process. So once we figured out the first character that we did, we kind of established the rules with that character, and from there on, we simply applied the same steps for each character. It's keeping the paint strokes on the face so it doesn't look all smooth, for example. For the hair, it's not just hair cards, it's geometry with hair cards on top, just a few to kind of add volume and those wispy looks of hair. Or for example, the outfits themselves are not like completely realistic or anything like that. We apply just masks, and we use, for example, the empty occlusion map that's baked in Substance. So there's definitely like a set of rules and steps that we have to follow, which in the end let us work way faster because everything is just set, that you already know what's going to be next and how to do it.
So So what's a
And it's
realistic turnaround then for a character of this style, Joao?
so from having just a base mesh of a body to fully textured, it's maybe now 7 days counting with feedback. So yeah, it's goes through the whole phase of block out to high poly to retopo, UVs, textured, all in 7 days. More
So
so.
that speed is obviously something that's going to be very important to the company and also the people in which that they hire. So what kind of advice could you give to graduates that are looking for their first role as a character artist in this kind of line of work? How do you become quicker?
I think it's going to be a cliche, my answer, but it's really practicing. It's really kind of. I'm not going to say mastering it because in a way you don't really master anything. If you say that you're a master, you kind of lost the ability of learning. But what I would say is just practicing to the point that you feel comfortable knowing which the next 20 steps will be in the process. It's a matter of knowing the software that you're using, which saves you a lot of time when you do, because it's just faster in the way that you think on how to reach or how to do certain details for the character. So it's definitely studying anatomy if you're going for character artist, or just studying anatomy in general, creature or character art.
So you're
Yeah.
really in a really accelerated period of your time in industry, that first sort of 5 to 10 years, where you're going from being a graduate at university into initially looking at sort of general game art, and then going into more character focus. What kind of experience, but what way did you get into going into characters initially? Because was that something that you initially wanted to do, or is it something that you've sort of grown into within your role?
So I don't know if you remember, but when I graduated, my final project was an environment, like a horror type of environment. So at the time, I never thought of, I did like characters, but I felt more comfortable in environments. I still do like environments, of course, but as the years passed, I guess, um, when I would think about personal projects to do and stuff to work on my own time, for some reason, I kept thinking about characters instead of environments. Plus, with working for Marmalade, when I started to do the tokens, uh, I was having a lot of fun doing the tokens, so the figurines or the animals, uh, and the very organic side of it. Um, and just one day, and thanks as well to Marmalade, because we have this uh, program in a way, or if you can call it a program, but per year you have an amount of time that you can use to kind of work on your own thing, like study essentially. Of course, you have to say what you're studying, just so they have a bit of awareness of what you're doing. But you can study pretty much not just 3D, it can be concept art, like 2D stuff. And I took that time to kind of go in depth with ZBrush and anatomy. And I saw that I was having a lot of fun. I started to see my weaknesses as well. So I still today am not very good, for example, with hair. I mean, a bit obvious, right? I got rid of mine, so hair is one of them. At the time, clothing as well. I was not feeling comfortable doing clothing in ZBrush, just ZBrush itself. I wasn't being I wasn't happy with the results, so I started to look more into Marvelous, and from there I kind of got the hang of how clothes would work and all of it, because just the intention of having an end goal of doing a character made me study and kind of made me aware of not completely trust simulations and actually study how certain things behave, like texture or textiles. And yeah, so I'd say the actual or origin point was because I was doing tokens for Monopoly, and it was like the segue for me going into more character art. So yeah, I'd say it was that for sure.
I noticed as you're going through your presentation, Gerald, that a few different things about how you go about your work. Obviously, we're going to have some character artists in viewing right now. I noticed your UVs were aligned and oriented towards the wheel position. Is that something that budding character artists should be doing? And if so, why is that?
Not necessarily. It was more of like for a purpose that I had for this specific character. So one thing that saves me time is if something is already placed in such a way that I don't have to copy paste, for example, in Substance, copy paste the smart materials or stuff like that. That will just make me wait for Substance to, do its calculations, apply the smart material, the masks, all of it. I don't do it every time. It's more of a tip in case these kinds of situations appear. For example, this character, he has the stripes all over his tuxedo. So in this case, I placed his UVs for the tuxedo all following the same direction. Since I had space as well in the UVs, I just placed them like that, and that saved me just the time of having to copy paste, wait, change whatever I need to change, because I used masks to remove certain details, so I have to go over that as well. So in this way, I apply once, work once on the things, and move on, and that's it. But I wouldn't say it should be a rule or anything like that. It's just more of a, if you have a situation like that, I mean, why not?
It's more of a way of being aware of what could go wrong.
Yeah.
And the experiences that you've had before perhaps taught you that. Would you say that's?
Yeah, it's adapting to the situation that you're working on, essentially. Yeah.
So, out of all the characters that you've worked on, which one was the most troublesome and why?
The most troublesome.
I thought it might trip you up, but I was hoping that we could find something that was a complete nightmare, perhaps.
Let me think here. Actually, yeah, I think I have it open. Yeah, I was open for here just in case. It was this guy here. Mostly because, like I said previously, I do not like doing retopology. And since I do manual retopology on clothing and all of it, this guy was a pain to retopologize, especially for the folds, so it would not have like any artifacts when I'd bake. So all these folds were super annoying to do. And then even more, it was posing. And since at the time I was trying out the rigs in Blender, because I do use Blender to 3D model. I was trying
I'm outnumbered in this chat now. Still stuck in Max, me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do kind of miss Max, but I have to say that Blender is just, it's something else, let's say.
It's something that many of our students and also staff use. I dare say, Jennifer, you've got a question for Joao.
Hi, yeah. So The one thing that I'm still really I'm trying to establish is when it comes to the overall topology of clothing for game ready characters. One thing I've really noticed is that in recent years, there's been more and more of an emphasis on trying to preserve the silhouette of the high poly on the characters, um, mostly at the cost of clean animation. So there's an example I always use in my classes, which is Adler's character from Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, where he's wearing this leather jacket and it is covered in these really intricate creases, especially around like the elbows and the shoulders and such. And the topology has been very carefully structured to preserve those. But whenever he bends his arms, the whole thing breaks. Like the jacket just clips through itself. And if this is like a big AAA game, this is one of the highest budget games you get every year, and that's the solution they found. Do you think that preserving the silhouette is more important than clean animation, or do you think that simplified garments with cleaner looking bends is a better solution?
So I would say there's a middle ground to it. Definitely not like they did, because if it's too much, exactly, it will show very weird results. But I would say, and this is what I kind of do with Cluedo, even though Cluedo it's not highly detailed or anything like that, is kind of predict more or less what kind of movements the character will do, and just add those folds on those areas. And if not, if the character, for example, will not be bending the arms too much or anything like that, I mean, don't use topology to go over the folds or anything like that. Just do a cleaner topology and let the bake do its work. So that way you kind of save on the both topology and then the weird results that you get with the animation. But definitely, I wouldn't say preserve completely the silhouette, but also not simplify too much if you're going for a more realistic look, I'd say.
Well, when you've mentioned sort of relying on the bakes, one technique that we do historically see quite a bit is normal blending. So, sort of simulating the outfit in multiple states, baking lots of normal maps, and then interpolating between them during an animation cycle. Do you think with the recent updates in rendering capabilities and some of the new technology we have, like Unreal 5, we might see a point where instead of relying on blending between normals, we instead have morph targets for the clothing for different animation states and the topology itself is shifting around? Do you think we'll get to that point anytime soon, or?
I mean, I think so. I mean, you already have the simulations that you can apply on clothing. If the clothing, for example, it's a cape or a long jacket or something like that. Plus, you can play with the shaders where they affect the normals. I think it was the example I can think of was
I think with this sort of
silence.
question, the problem is that with things like morphers or blend shapes, you're always reliant on sort of vertex animations being baked into the object itself, and with that happening, when taking into the engine, you're going to be relying then on lots of different animations being able to be triggered at specific points within specific movements in relation to the player, and that's going to be a lot of memory to compute.
Yeah.
I would expect. I mean, from our experiences in the past, Joao, when we've done animated characters and things like that, that really with Morpher, they have been left for trailers or left for videos or things like that, specifically for facial animation. So I think I would probably say yes, that's where we would expect things to go, Jennifer. But I'm not aware of personally anybody doing it yet.
Yeah.
I've not heard of any examples of anyone doing it. I was just curious if you think that's sort of the next logical step, or if I'm looking way off in the future now.
I mean, giving an example of nanite in Unreal, that pretty much, even though you should not, in my opinion, you should not use it like fully 100% and leave like unoptimized assets in engine. But just the fact that a system can pretty much reduce by itself the assets on a long distance, maybe by the same logic, we could have a solution for that sort of animation where it would kind of, let's give an example of WinRAR. When you I'm missing the word right now, but when you, yeah, exactly, and the size of the file reduces. Maybe something like that in the near future, where a system kind of just reduces the file size of things during runtime or something like that, and it becomes an organic system that's used only when it's needed.
You've also got the possibility of whether we might be able to turn it into some more procedural movements, like we're seeing with things like the new sort of procedural humanoids coming out with MetaHuman, and the animations that they're doing is how can we make things more more general so that then the animations can be bespoke. Although, again, then you've got to think about, are we making bespoke characters anymore, or are we making everything procedural in order to be able to be managed in that way? And I think then you start to lose maybe some of the creativity of character artists and concept artists in that workflow. So I think it's got to potentially go towards that in some way in order to retain the unique results of character artists, has it not?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that we kind of have to be careful in the industry, not to completely kill a whole area of artistry, and leave it to the AIs and all the the computations to do the work. I mean, it's kind of loses the magic of it in a way. Useful, but with some restraint.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to stop the stream there, Joao, because I think we've took enough of your time. Thank you very much for performing for us today, and spending the time to put together such a nicely formatted approach for certainly students and individuals that want to feel as though that they've got some guidance along the process of making characters. And it's also quite nice to know that there's a reiteration taking place between sort of members of staff here as well, and how they're going about doing their modules in a similar way to what you're approaching characters. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we and myself hear a lot more about what you're doing in the next 5 years. I'm not to say sound creepy, but watching closely as a former student of mine. So thank you very much again for joining us, and thanks very much everybody else for joining us. We hope that you'll join us again at 1 p.m. for our second industry talk of the day, that is going to be with Arne Billen, a freelance 2D digital artist. Thanks very much for watching, and
thank you for having me.
See you next time.